Marcus Hartwell had served as a palace guard for 12 years, but nothing had prepared him for what he would discover on that foggy October evening. The ancient stone corridors of Valdoria Castle seemed to whisper secrets as he made his routine patrol through the East Wing. His leather boots echoed softly against the marble floors as he passed the ornate tapestries depicting centuries of royal history. The kingdom of Valdoria had been ruled by King Edmund for nearly 2 decades, a fair and just monarch beloved by his people. His marriage to Queen Seraphina 5 years ago had been celebrated throughout the realm, though some whispered that the union was more political than romantic. Marcus had always kept such gossip to himself, focusing instead on his duty to protect the royal family. As he turned the corner near the Queen's private chambers, Marcus heard hushed voices coming from behind a partially open door. Protocol dictated that he should announce his presence, but something in the urgent tone of the conversation made him pause. He recognized Queen Seraphina's melodic voice, but she sounded different somehow, strained and anxious. Moving closer to the shadows, Marcus positioned himself where he could hear more clearly without being seen. The Queen was speaking to someone he couldn't identify, their voice too low to distinguish. What he heard next made his blood run cold. The Queen was discussing something about the king's upcoming hunting expedition, mentioning specific details about routes and timing that only someone with intimate knowledge of royal security would know. Marcus felt his heart racing as he strained to hear more. The conversation continued for several minutes, with the Queen providing information about the king's daily routines, his favorite walking paths in the castle gardens, and even details about his personal guard rotations. The unknown person seemed to be taking notes, asking specific questions about vulnerabilities and opportunities. When the conversation finally ended, Marcus quickly retreated to a nearby alcove, his mind reeling from what he had overheard. Years of training had taught him to trust his instincts, and every fiber of his being was screaming that something was terribly wrong. The Queen's behavior was suspicious, but he needed more evidence before he could act on his suspicions. As he continued his patrol, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled upon something much larger than a simple breach of protocol. The way the Queen had spoken, the careful planning evident in their discussion, suggested a conspiracy that went far deeper than he could have imagined. He knew he had to be careful about his next moves, as accusing the Queen of treasonous behavior without solid proof could cost him his life. The rest of his shift passed in a blur of anxiety and determination. Marcus made mental notes of every detail he could remember from the conversation, knowing that he would need to document everything carefully. As dawn approached and he prepared to end his patrol, he made a decision that would change the course of his life forever. He would begin his own investigation into Queen Seraphina's activities, using his position and access to uncover the truth about what he had witnessed. Marcus understood the enormous risk he was taking. If he was wrong about the Queen's intentions, he would face execution for treason. But if he was right and he did nothing, King Edmund's life could be in mortal danger. His loyalty to the crown and his oath as a palace guard left him with no choice but to pursue the truth, regardless of the consequences. As he walked toward his quarters, Marcus began formulating a plan to gather more information. He would need to be subtle and patient, using his knowledge of the castle's layout and routines to his advantage. The investigation would require careful timing and absolute discretion, as one wrong move could expose him before he had gathered enough evidence to present to the proper authorities. The morning sun was beginning to filter through the stained glass windows as Marcus finally reached his room. But sleep would not come easily. His mind was already working through the possibilities and planning his next steps in what would become the most important mission of his career as a palace guard. 3 days had passed since Marcus overheard the suspicious conversation, and he had spent every available moment carefully observing Queen Seraphina's movements and interactions. His position as a senior guard gave him legitimate reasons to be present in various parts of the castle, allowing him to conduct his investigation without raising suspicion. During his observations, Marcus noticed patterns that troubled him deeply. The Queen had been meeting regularly with Lord Blackwood, the kingdom's treasurer, in locations that seemed deliberately chosen for their privacy. These encounters always occurred during times when King Edmund was occupied with official duties or state meetings, suggesting careful coordination to avoid detection. Marcus had also discovered that the Queen possessed a small device that she kept hidden in her jewelry box, something that looked like a modern recording instrument, despite the medieval setting of their kingdom. This discovery confirmed his suspicions that the conversation he had overheard was likely being documented for someone else's benefit. The breakthrough in his investigation came when Marcus decided to follow Lord Blackwood after one of his meetings with the Queen. Using his knowledge of the castle's secret passages, Marcus was able to track the treasurer to a chamber deep in the castle's lower levels, a room that was supposedly used only for storage but had been converted into what appeared to be a private office. Hidden in the shadows, Marcus watched as Lord Blackwood activated the same type of recording device the Queen had been using. The treasurer began speaking to someone through what appeared to be a communication system, reporting on the progress of their plans and confirming details about the king's upcoming activities. The conversation revealed that they were working with outside forces who wanted King Edmund removed from power. As Marcus listened, he learned that the plot involved more than just the Queen and Lord Blackwood. They mentioned other conspirators within the castle staff, including members of the kitchen crew who had access to the king's food and drink. The plan was sophisticated and well coordinated, with multiple backup strategies in case their primary approach failed. The most shocking revelation came when Lord Blackwood mentioned a specific timeline. They were planning to act during the Harvest Festival just 1 week away, when the castle would be filled with visitors and the normal security protocols would be stretched thin. The chaos of the celebration would provide perfect cover for their assassination attempt. Marcus realized that he had stumbled upon a conspiracy that threatened not just the king's life, but the stability of the entire kingdom. Queen Serafina was not acting alone but was part of a larger network of traitors who had been planning this coup for months, possibly years. The evidence he had gathered was substantial, but he knew he needed something more concrete to convince the proper authorities. After Lord Blackwood finished his communication and left the hidden chamber, Marcus carefully entered the room to examine it more closely. He found documents that detailed the conspiracy in writing, including maps of the castle marked with strategic positions and a list of loyal guards who would need to be eliminated or neutralized during the coup attempt. Among the papers, Marcus discovered correspondence with foreign agents who were promising military support once King Edmund was removed from power. The letters revealed that Queen Serafina would be installed as a puppet ruler, with the real power being held by these outside forces who sought to control Valdoria's rich natural resources and strategic location. The weight of this discovery nearly overwhelmed Marcus as he realized the full scope of the threat facing his kingdom. Not only was this a plot to murder the king, but it was essentially an invasion planned from within, using traitors in the highest positions of trust to hand over their nation to foreign enemies. Marcus carefully photographed the documents using a small camera he carried for security purposes, ensuring he had permanent records of the evidence he had discovered. He then returned everything to its original position and made his way back through the secret passages to avoid detection. As he emerged from the hidden areas of the castle, Marcus knew that his investigation had reached a critical point. He had gathered enough evidence to prove the conspiracy existed, but now he faced the challenge of determining who he could trust with this information. With traitors embedded throughout the castle staff and even among the nobility, presenting his findings to the wrong person could result in his death and the success of the coup. The next phase of his mission would be the most dangerous yet, as he would need to find a way to warn King Edmund while avoiding the extensive network of conspirators who were watching for any sign that their plot had been discovered. Marcus spent the following day carefully analyzing everyone who had access to King Edmund, trying to determine who could be trusted with the explosive information he had uncovered. His years of service had given him insight into the character and loyalty of many castle staff members, but the scope of the conspiracy made him question everything he thought he knew. The king's personal bodyguard, Sir Roland Ashford, seemed like the most logical choice to approach first. Roland had served the royal family for over 15 years and had personally saved King Edmund's life during a previous assassination attempt by foreign agents. His loyalty had never been questioned, and his position gave him direct access to the king without raising suspicion. However, Marcus noticed that Sir Roland had been spending considerable time in conversation with Lord Blackwood recently, which gave him pause. The conversations appeared friendly and routine. But given what Marcus now knew about the treasurer's involvement in the conspiracy, these interactions took on a more sinister potential meaning. Instead, Marcus decided to approach Dame Catherine Winters, the king's chief advisor and one of the few people who had known Edmund since before he became king. Catherine had a reputation for brilliant strategic thinking and unwavering loyalty to the crown. More importantly, Marcus had never seen her interact with any of the suspected conspirators in ways that suggested collaboration. Finding an opportunity to speak privately with Dame Catherine required careful planning. Marcus waited until she was making her regular evening walk through the castle gardens, a routine she had maintained for years as a way to clear her mind after long days of court business. The gardens provided the perfect setting for a discreet conversation, away from the prying eyes and listening ears that filled the castle corridors. Approaching Catherine with obvious nervousness, Marcus requested a private audience on a matter of urgent security. His serious demeanor and the gravity in his voice immediately captured her attention. Catherine had worked with palace guards long enough to recognize when someone had discovered something genuinely important and dangerous. In whispered tones, Marcus began revealing what he had discovered about Queen Seraphina's involvement in the conspiracy against King Edmund. He showed Catherine the photographs he had taken of the documents, explaining how he had come to uncover the plot, and detailing the evidence he had gathered over the past several days. Catherine's reaction confirmed Marcus's decision to trust her. Rather than dismissing his claims or showing surprise that could indicate prior knowledge, she listened intently and asked intelligent questions that demonstrated both her analytical mind and her genuine concern for the king's safety. Her responses convinced Marcus that she was not part of the conspiracy. After reviewing all the evidence Marcus had collected, Catherine revealed information that added another layer of complexity to the situation. She had noticed unusual patterns in recent diplomatic communications and unexplained changes in trade agreements that now made sense in the context of foreign involvement in the plot against King Edmund. Catherine also shared her own suspicions about certain members of the court who had been pushing for policy changes that would benefit foreign interests. These observations, combined with Marcus's evidence, painted a picture of a conspiracy that had been years in the making and involved careful manipulation of political and economic systems. The most troubling revelation came when Catherine mentioned that she had recently been approached by Queen Seraphina about changing certain security protocols for the upcoming harvest festival. The Queen had suggested modifications that would have reduced protection around King Edmund, claiming they were necessary to allow him to interact more freely with the celebrating citizens. This information confirmed that the timeline Marcus had overheard was accurate and that the conspirators were already beginning to implement the final stages of their plan. With less than a week remaining before the harvest festival, they had very little time to develop a counter-strategy that would protect the king while exposing the full extent of the conspiracy. Catherine and Marcus agreed that they needed to gather additional evidence before approaching King Edmund directly. They decided that Marcus would continue his surveillance, while Catherine used her position to investigate the diplomatic and financial aspects of the conspiracy. Their goal was to identify all the conspirators and understand the complete scope of the foreign involvement. The conversation ended with both of them understanding the enormous responsibility they now shared. The fate of King Edmund and the independence of their kingdom rested on their ability to outmaneuver a sophisticated conspiracy that had been planned with careful attention to detail and supported by substantial resources. As they parted ways in the garden, both Marcus and Catherine knew that the next few days would determine whether their investigation would save their king and kingdom or whether they would become additional victims of a plot that seemed to anticipate and counter every possible threat to its success. The next morning brought unexpected developments that forced Marcus and Dame Catherine to accelerate their investigation. During the early hours, Marcus observed Queen Seraphina receiving a mysterious visitor who arrived at the castle under the cover of darkness. The visitor was escorted directly to the Queen's private chambers through a route that avoided the main guard stations, suggesting prior coordination to ensure secrecy. Using his access to the castle's hidden passages, Marcus was able to position himself near the Queen's chambers, where he could monitor the situation without being detected. The conversation he overheard revealed that the timeline for their assassination plot had been moved up due to concerns that their activities might have been discovered by someone within the castle. The visitor, who spoke with a foreign accent that Marcus couldn't immediately identify, expressed worry about maintaining operational security as the harvest festival approached. They discussed the possibility that their communications had been compromised and debated whether to proceed with their original plan or implement one of their backup strategies. Queen Seraphina assured her visitor that she had been carefully monitoring the castle staff and had not detected any signs of surveillance or investigation into their activities. However, she agreed that they should implement additional security measures to protect their operation, including the elimination of any potential witnesses who might have stumbled upon information about their conspiracy. This development sent chills through Marcus as he realized that his investigation might have been detected despite his careful precautions. The conspirators were clearly taking steps to protect themselves, which meant that both he and Dame Catherine could now be in immediate danger if their involvement became known to the wrong people. After the mysterious visitor left through the same concealed route, Marcus quickly made his way to find Dame Catherine and warn her about these new developments. He found her in the castle library, where she had been researching historical records related to some of the foreign entities mentioned in the conspiracy documents. Catherine's research had yielded disturbing information about the scope of the foreign involvement in their kingdom's affairs. She had discovered that several recent policy decisions and trade agreements had been influenced by the same entities that were now supporting the plot against King Edmund. The conspiracy was not just about removing the king, but about systematically undermining Valdoria's independence over an extended period. When Marcus shared what he had learned about the accelerated timeline and increased security concerns, Catherine immediately understood the implications for their investigation. They needed to act quickly to protect themselves while gathering the final pieces of evidence needed to expose the full conspiracy to King Edmund. Catherine suggested that they implement their own security measures by creating a detailed record of everything they had discovered and hiding copies in multiple secure locations throughout the castle. This would ensure that if something happened to either of them, the evidence would still be available to loyal members of the King's Guard or other trusted advisors. They also decided to expand their circle of trust by carefully approaching Sir Roland Ashford. Despite Marcus's earlier concerns about the bodyguard's interactions with Lord Blackwood, Catherine's analysis of those interactions had revealed that Sir Roland was likely being manipulated by the treasurer rather than actively collaborating with the conspiracy. Their approach to Sir Roland would need to be extremely careful, as a mistake could expose their investigation and result in immediate retaliation from the conspirators. They planned to present him with a limited amount of information initially, watching his reaction carefully to confirm his loyalty before revealing the full scope of what they had discovered. The meeting with Sir Roland was arranged for that evening in the castle's armory, a location that would provide privacy while also offering legitimate reasons for their presence together. Marcus would present the basic evidence of a threat against the king, while Catherine would observe Sir Roland's responses for any signs of deception or prior knowledge. As they prepared for this crucial meeting, both Marcus and Catherine were acutely aware that they were reaching a point of no return in their investigation. Once they brought Sir Roland into their circle, they would be committed to a course of action that would either save King Edmund and expose the conspiracy, or result in their own deaths if they had misjudged the bodyguard's loyalty. The afternoon passed slowly as they finalized their preparations and mentally rehearsed their approach to Sir Roland. Both investigators understood that the success of their mission would depend not just on the evidence they had gathered, but on their ability to navigate the complex web of loyalties and deceptions that had been woven throughout the castle over the years the conspiracy had been developing. As evening approached, Marcus found himself reflecting on how his simple patrol duty had evolved into a mission that would determine the fate of his kingdom, and possibly cost him his life in the process of protecting his king. The meeting with Sir Roland in the castle armory proceeded better than Marcus and Dame Catherine had dared to hope. When presented with the evidence of a conspiracy against King Edmund, The bodyguard's reaction was immediate and genuine concern for his sovereign's safety. His questions were precisely what they would expect from someone whose primary focus was protecting the king, rather than covering up his own involvement in treasonous activities. Sir Roland revealed that he had indeed been having regular conversations with Lord Blackwood, but these interactions had been initiated by the treasurer under the pretext of coordinating security arrangements for various court functions. The bodyguard had found some of Blackwood's suggestions unusual and occasionally inappropriate, but had attributed this to the treasurer's lack of understanding about security protocols rather than malicious intent. More significantly, Sir Roland shared information about changes in Queen Seraphina's behavior that he had noticed over the past several months. The Queen had been asking detailed questions about the king's daily routines and security arrangements, claiming she wanted to better coordinate her own schedule with his activities. At the time, these inquiries had seemed reasonable, but in light of the conspiracy evidence, they took on a much more sinister meaning. With Sir Roland's knowledge of the king's protection details and Catherine's understanding of court politics, they were able to develop a comprehensive plan to both protect King Edmund and gather the final evidence needed to expose all the conspirators. Their strategy would require careful timing and coordination, as they needed to maintain the appearance of normal operations while secretly preparing to counter the assassination attempt. The first phase of their plan involved Sir Roland discreetly modifying the king's security arrangements for the harvest festival without alerting the conspirators to these changes. Instead of reducing protection as Queen Seraphina had suggested, he would actually increase the number of loyal guards assigned to the king, while making these additions appear to be routine adjustments for the large celebration. Meanwhile, Marcus would continue his surveillance of the conspiracy members, but with a new focus on documenting their final preparations for the assassination attempt. They needed to gather evidence that would not only prove the conspiracy existed, but would also demonstrate the full scope of the foreign involvement and identify all the domestic collaborators. Catherine would use her diplomatic connections to verify the involvement of foreign entities and begin preparing evidence that could be presented to allied kingdoms if the conspiracy threatened to destabilize the region. Her research had revealed that similar plots were potentially being implemented in neighboring realms, suggesting a coordinated effort to reshape the political landscape of their entire region. The second phase of their plan would involve exposing the conspiracy to King Edmund in a way that would allow him to use the information strategically rather than simply reacting defensively. They would present their evidence during a private meeting scheduled for the day before the harvest festival, giving the king time to coordinate with them on the final countermeasures while maintaining the element of surprise. As they worked through the details of their plan, an unexpected opportunity presented itself when Marcus observed Lord Blackwood preparing to meet with the mysterious foreign visitor again. This time, instead of simply observing, Marcus and Sir Roland decided to attempt recording the conversation using the same type of device the conspirators had been using for their own communications. The recording operation required Marcus to gain access to the hidden chamber where the meeting would take place, while Sir Roland provided security and early warning if anyone approached the area unexpectedly. Catherine remained in position to provide an alibi for both guards if their absence from normal duties was noticed by other castle staff. The conversation they recorded provided the final pieces of evidence they needed to understand the complete scope of the conspiracy. Lord Blackwood and the foreign agent discussed not only the assassination plan for King Edmund, but also arrangements for Queen Seraphina's installation as a puppet ruler and the systematic replacement of key government officials with individuals loyal to the foreign interests. Most shocking was the revelation that the conspiracy included plans for eliminating other members of the royal family who might pose a threat to the new regime, including King Edmund's younger brother, Prince Alexander, who was widely respected by both the nobility and common citizens. The plot was far more extensive than they had initially realized, amounting to a complete takeover of the kingdom rather than a simple change in leadership. The recorded conversation also revealed the specific timing and method planned for the assassination attempt during the harvest festival. The conspirators intended to use a combination of poisoned wine and a staged accident to eliminate King Edmund in a way that would appear to be either natural causes or a tragic mishap during the celebration. With this final piece of evidence, Marcus, Catherine, and Sir Rowland had everything they needed to present a complete case to King Edmund and coordinate an effective response that would not only save his life, but also preserve the independence of their kingdom. However, they also realized that they now possessed information that made them extremely dangerous to the conspirators, meaning they would need to be exceptionally careful during the remaining time before they could safely reveal their discoveries to the king. The morning of their planned meeting with King Edmund brought an unexpected crisis that threatened to derail their entire operation. Marcus discovered that Queen Seraphina had requested a private audience with the king that same afternoon, using the pretext of discussing arrangements for a special ceremony during the harvest festival. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental, suggesting that the conspirators might have detected their investigation and were moving to accelerate their plans. Sir Rowland immediately recognized the danger of allowing the Queen private access to King Edmund before they could warn him about the conspiracy. However, canceling or postponing the Queen's audience without valid reasons would certainly alert the conspirators that their plot had been discovered. They needed a solution that would protect the king while maintaining the appearance that their investigation remained secret. Catherine suggested that they implement an emergency protocol that would allow Sir Rowland to interrupt the Queen's audience under the pretense of urgent security matters requiring the king's immediate attention. This would limit the time Seraphina had alone with Edmund, while providing an opportunity to extract him from a potentially dangerous situation if necessary. Meanwhile, Marcus would position himself to monitor Lord Blackwood and other suspected conspirators during the time of the Queen's audience, watching for any signs that they were implementing backup plans or preparing to act immediately if their primary strategy was exposed. The network of hidden passages that had served their investigation so well would now become crucial for maintaining surveillance without detection. The private audience between Queen Seraphina and King Edmund began exactly as scheduled, with Sir Rowland maintaining his normal position outside the royal study, while secretly preparing to intervene if he detected any immediate threat to the king's safety. Catherine positioned herself in the adjacent library, where she could coordinate communications between Marcus and Sir Rowland if emergency action became necessary. Through careful observation and the strategic placement of recording equipment, they were able to monitor the conversation between the king and queen. What they heard confirmed their worst fears about the acceleration of the conspiracy timeline. Queen Seraphina was using the meeting to propose last-minute changes to the harvest festival security arrangements that would create exactly the vulnerabilities needed for the assassination attempt to succeed. More disturbing was the Queen's subtle probing of King Edmund's knowledge about recent activities within the castle. She asked seemingly innocent questions about whether he had noticed any unusual behavior among the staff or received any concerning reports from his advisors. Her inquiries suggested that the conspirators suspected their plot might have been discovered and were trying to determine how much the king knew. King Edmund's responses revealed that he had indeed noticed some irregularities in recent weeks, including unusual patterns in correspondence and unexplained changes in routine protocols that had been implemented without his direct authorization. However, he had not yet connected these observations to any specific threat, which meant their investigation had remained successfully concealed from the primary target. The conversation took a dangerous turn when Queen Seraphina began pressing the king to approve her proposed security modifications for the harvest festival, using emotional manipulation and appeals to his desire to connect with his people during the celebration. Her arguments were carefully crafted to make rejection of her suggestions appear unreasonable or overly paranoid. At this critical moment, Sir Rowland implemented their emergency protocol by announcing the arrival of urgent dispatches that required the king's immediate attention. The interruption was timed perfectly to prevent King Edmund from making any commitments to the Queen's dangerous proposals while providing a natural conclusion to their private flirting. As Queen Seraphina left the royal study, Marcus observed her proceeding directly to a prearranged meeting with Lord Blackwood and several other conspirators. The urgency of their gathering and the agitated nature of their discussion confirmed that they were concerned about potential exposure of their plot and were considering alternative approaches to achieve their objectives. The recording equipment that Marcus had placed near their meeting location captured discussions about implementing more direct and immediate methods if their sophisticated assassination plan could not proceed as originally designed. The conspirators were prepared to abandon subtlety in favor of a more obvious attack if they believed their window of opportunity was closing. This development forced Marcus, Catherine, and Sir Roland to recognize that they could no longer wait until the scheduled meeting time to warn King Edmund about the conspiracy. The threat level had escalated to the point where immediate action was necessary to prevent either a sophisticated assassination during the harvest festival or a more desperate attack that could occur at any time. They quickly modified their approach, with Sir Roland requesting an immediate private security briefing with the king under the authority of his position as head of royal protection. Catherine would participate as chief advisor, while Marcus would present the evidence they had gathered as the investigating officer who had discovered the initial threat. The emergency meeting was scheduled for that evening in the king's private war room, a location that offered maximum security and privacy, while also providing access to communication systems that would allow them to coordinate with loyal military units if immediate protective action became necessary. The next few hours would determine whether their investigation had uncovered the conspiracy in time to save both King Edmund and the kingdom from falling under foreign control. The emergency meeting in King Edmund's private war room began with Sir Roland presenting the security concerns that had necessitated the urgent briefing. As the evidence was methodically presented by Marcus and analyzed by Dame Catherine, King Edmund's expression shifted from initial skepticism to grave concern and finally to controlled anger as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. The king's reaction demonstrated both his political wisdom and his personal pain at discovering that his wife had been actively working to orchestrate his assassination. However, Edmund quickly moved beyond emotional responses to focus on the strategic implications of the conspiracy and the immediate actions required to protect the kingdom from foreign manipulation. After reviewing all the evidence, including the recorded conversations and documentary proof of foreign involvement, King Edmund made the decision to use the Harvest Festival as an opportunity to expose and capture the conspirators, rather than simply preventing the assassination attempt. This approach would allow them to gather additional evidence and identify any remaining collaborators while demonstrating to foreign enemies that their infiltration had been completely compromised. The plan they developed required careful coordination between loyal palace guards, trusted military units, and intelligence operatives who could be mobilized without alerting the conspiracy network. Sir Roland would maintain normal security protocols while secretly positioning additional protection around the king. Catherine would coordinate with diplomatic contacts to prepare evidence for presentation to allied kingdoms, while Marcus would continue surveillance to ensure no conspirators escaped detection. King Edmund himself would play a crucial role by appearing to accept Queen Seraphina's security modifications for the Harvest Festival, leading the conspirators to believe their plan remained viable, while actually walking into a carefully prepared trap. The king's performance would need to be convincing enough to prevent the conspirators from abandoning their sophisticated approach in favor of more desperate measures. The Harvest Festival proceeded exactly as the conspirators had planned, with Queen Seraphina implementing her modified security arrangements, and Lord Blackwood ensuring that his foreign contacts were positioned to observe the success of their operation. However, every aspect of their plan was being monitored and countered by the loyal forces that King Edmund had discreetly positioned throughout the celebration. When Queen Seraphina approached King Edmund with the poisoned wine that was intended to begin his assassination, loyal guards immediately moved to prevent him from consuming it, while simultaneously arresting the Queen and Lord Blackwood. The synchronized operation captured all the identified conspirators within minutes, preventing any opportunity for escape or the destruction of additional evidence. The foreign agents who had been observing the festival were also apprehended, providing King Edmund with valuable intelligence about similar operations that were being conducted in neighboring kingdoms. The interrogation of these agents revealed a broader conspiracy aimed at destabilizing the entire region through the systematic elimination of independent monarchs and their replacement with puppet rulers. In the days following the Harvest Festival, the full extent of the conspiracy was revealed through detailed investigations of the captured conspirators and their foreign handlers. The evidence gathered by Marcus, Catherine, and Sir Rowland proved instrumental in unraveling networks of corruption and foreign influence that had been operating throughout the kingdom for several years. Queen Seraphina's trial became a public demonstration of the consequences of treason, with the evidence presented in a way that educated citizens about the sophisticated methods used by foreign enemies to undermine their independence. The trial also served as a warning to other potential collaborators that such activities would be detected and punished with the full force of the law. King Edmund used the exposure of the conspiracy to strengthen relationships with allied kingdoms and implement new security measures designed to prevent similar infiltration in the future. The intelligence gathered from the captured foreign agents was shared with friendly nations, helping to disrupt related operations and protect the broader regional stability. Marcus was promoted to a senior position within the Royal Intelligence Service, where his investigative skills and unwavering loyalty could be used to protect the kingdom from future threats. Dame Catherine was appointed as the new head of internal security, responsible for developing systems to detect and counter foreign influence operations before they could threaten the crown. Sir Rowland continued as King Edmund's personal bodyguard, but with expanded authority to coordinate security throughout the entire royal household and implement protocols designed to prevent the infiltration of trusted positions by enemy agents. His experience during the conspiracy investigation had provided valuable insights into the vulnerabilities that foreign enemies could exploit. The successful exposure of the conspiracy not only saved King Edmund's life but also strengthened the kingdom's independence and security. The investigation had demonstrated that vigilant citizens and loyal servants could protect their nation from even the most sophisticated attempts at foreign manipulation, provided they remained alert to unusual activities and reported their concerns to appropriate authorities. Marcus often reflected on how a routine patrol had led to uncovering a conspiracy that could have changed the course of history for their kingdom and the entire region. His dedication to duty and willingness to investigate suspicious activities had ultimately preserved the independence and stability that King Edmund's reign had brought to Valdoria.